Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Well, the biggest transfer saga of the summer is almost over, and no, I'm not talking about Kylian Mbappe or Moises Caicedo. Of course, I'm talking about Chuba Akpom, who was on the cusp of completing a move to the Dutch giants Ajax. The deal's going to be worth £12 million plus add-ons, and it represents a huge deal for Middlesbrough, Chuba Akpom and Ajax themselves. And it brings an end to months of speculation and a 12 months which has been full of twists and turns for the striker himself. Before I get into the timeline of how the deal's kind of come about, I really appreciate all of the support that I'm still getting for the channel. If you are liking what you're watching, or if you have any suggestions on ways that I can improve or anything like that, please do feel free to comment below. And if you are enjoying the videos themselves, do like and subscribe as well, as the support goes a long way, and it kind of shows me what sort of things that you're interested in hearing about from a Middlesbrough point of view. But I think as it stands at the moment, Chuba Akpom is definitely the biggest talking point around the club at the moment, and this is the story, I guess, of how his move to Ajax came about. So obviously, an Arsenal academy graduate, broke into the first team in North London, but was shipped out on loan time and time again until 2018, when he joined Greek side PAOK on a permanent basis. He spent 2 years in Greece, scoring 18 goals over those two campaigns, leading Middlesbrough to move to sign him for 2.75 million in 2020. His first season at the Riverside wasn't great. It got off to a brilliant start, to be fair. He scored 2 goals in his first 2 games against QPR and Burnley, but ended the campaign with just 5 goals under Neil Warnock. The following summer, it looked like he hadn't really done enough to justify his place at the Riverside. His future certainly looked uncertain, so he rejoined PAOK on a loan deal, where he enjoyed a much better time. To be frank, he scored 11 goals that season before returning to Middlesbrough in the summer of 2022 last year. Obviously, he returned to the Riverside. It looked like his days at the club were very much numbered, to be honest. At the time, with Duncan Watmore at the club, Marcus Forss had just been signed, Matthew Hoppy had just been signed, Rodrigo Muniz was in the works. It looked like that was going to be happening at the time, and Akpom looked like a player who was going to be heading for the exit door for sure. But with no strikers available for the club's final pre-season match against Marseille, Chris Wilder took a punt and chucked Chuba Akpom in, just to kind of see what he could do. And I guess from the striker's point of view, it was a no-lose situation. He came in, he had nothing to lose in terms of his standing within the Middlesbrough squad, because frankly he didn't have one at the time. But it was an opportunity for him to put in an impressive display, show that he was fit, and convince another club from England, from the UK, or from Europe to try and take a punt on him and get his career off the ground. Obviously, he impressed in that game against Marseille. He didn't score in the match, but he certainly looked bright. He was a player who came on, and as Middlesbrough won 2-0, he showed pace, he showed energy, he held up the ball well, he worked hard, and he was a player that a lot of fans thought, where was this player a couple of seasons ago when he first signed? Because he looked like a different animal, to be honest. He came in, he looked hungry, and that was enough for Chris Wilder to show some faith in him in the early months of the season. His first 3 games of the season, he scored 2 goals. And saw off competition in attack from Rodrigo Muniz, who came in on loan from Fulham. He did suffer an injury, but he came back into the team after that as well. And due to the consistency of his performances, Akpom, who was due to be out of contract the summer just gone, so 2023, Middlesbrough triggered a 12-month contract extension clause in his deal to take his contract through until the summer of 2024, so 12 months' time from now. I don't need to tell you what happened last season. Chuba Akpom was simply outstanding for Middlesbrough. He scored 29 goals over the course of the campaign. He was named as the Championship's Player of the Year, which is no mean feat considering the standard of player that was in the league last season. And it was simply a remarkable turnaround considering that he'd been ushered to the exit door just 12 months previous to that. So with such stellar performances to his name, not to mention the remarkable consistency that he showed over the course of the campaign, for me, I think that was probably the most impressive thing. It wasn't a flurry of 5 games, 5 goals sort of thing. He was consistently putting the ball in the back of the net, but also really contributing to the team effort in that kind of number 10 role. And it was that which basically led to a lot of speculation about Akpom's future as we kind of moved towards the end of the season, and that's kind of when the talking started to begin. I guess the talking about Akpom's future kind of started at the beginning of March. Michael Carrick was asked directly about Akpom's future and his contract situation, and speaking in a press conference, he said, "Sitting here, no, there is nothing to update on right now. Listen, Chuba is obviously doing great for us, and it's something we're looking at between now and the end of the season. Not just Chuba, but contracts for players moving into the summer and next season. Individually, though, there is no update to give you on Chuba." Asked if he wanted Akpom to stay, he said, "Yeah, he's done great, and we say this every week, but we're always talking about him for good reasons. He's got a big part to play between now and the end of the season, and we're looking forward to seeing that between now and then." Obviously, his performances continued towards the end of the season. He reached that tally of 29 goals, and he appeared on the Boro Breakdown podcast at the end of the season, and started to give his, implying that he would like to stay at the club. So quoting from that, he said, "To the supporters, I would just like to say thank you to everyone for all the love that they've given me. I've received messages every single day and I read them all. I can't reply to every single one, sorry guys, but everywhere I go I just receive love and I'm so grateful. It's an amazing feeling and I can't really describe it when people just take to you like that. So my message is just thank you because I really do appreciate it. I just want to do the same thing again and the love just gives me the motivation to go and do the same thing again, so thank you. This was only the start for us," he said. "Imagine the team when we've gelled together for even longer, because remember we weren't even together for a full season. The gaffer only came in October, so imagine if we get full pre-season together and go into the season, obviously a few additional players coming in as well. It could be an amazing season, fingers crossed, and that's really exciting. Let me rest for a bit now, but definitely next season I want to push on. Why not aim to do the same again? I've always tried to not be small-minded." A clear indication from Akpom that he was thinking about sticking around this season. And Michael Carrick was asked about him again in late July, on the 22nd of July, and asked if he wanted him to stay. Carrick said, "I hope so, of course I do. He's a big player for us." He did go on to say, "Football is football, and I'd be stupid on any player to guarantee anything, but because it doesn't work like that, but we'll see. We're trying." He said a great time. He did a great season last season, and as we all did. We fell a bit short, so we're hungry to do better this season. He's still here. He's our player this season. I speak to Chuba every day. So at that point, everything kind of looked quite clear. The player wanted to stay. Michael Carrick wanted him to stay. But Mark Drury on BBC Tees kind of threw the cat amongst the pigeons unknowingly by reporting that the numbers being quoted by Akpom and his agent for a new contract were way beyond what Middlesbrough could or would be willing to pay. That was something which got fans a little bit worried, but Akpom came straight out on social media immediately afterwards and retweeted the quote, saying emphatically that it was not true. He also came out the next day and did another interview and asked if he wanted to stay. He said, "Yeah, of course, I've made it clear that I feel at home here, so I think me saying that shows that I would love to stay here. I play my best football here and I just feel very loved by the fans. We just have to see how things go. A lot of things are not in my control or not in my hands, so I just have to focus on getting fit and being ready to play football again." Unfortunately, it was kind of at that point that things started to get a little bit mixed in the messaging, because Sky Sports reported that Akpom was then unlikely to sign a new deal with Middlesbrough, with the club slapping a £15 million price tag on his head. French club Lens and Sheffield United were interested in the player, with the French club offering him £8 million reportedly. Ajax then also emerged as a contender to sign him as well. A couple of days after that, Sky Sports reported that Akpom would not be signing a new contract at the club, with reports coming out swiftly that Lens had agreed a £50 million deal to sign the player. Despite being on the road to fitness, though, Akpom wasn't involved against Coventry, despite Sky Sports suggesting that the player had been on the coach for the match, with Michael Carrick confirming before that match that the club had been receiving offers for the player. But it turned out that after that, both Lens and Ajax had lodged bids for the player before David Ornstein reported on Sunday evening that Ajax had struck a deal worth £12 million plus add-ons to finally bring the long-running transfer saga to an end. In terms of my opinion on the Akpom to Ajax deal, it's hard to say anything other than that it seems like it's a really good deal for all parties. From Akpom's point of view, a career of a player is short, and when clubs from the Champions League do come in for you and there's genuine interest, it's hard to blame him for wanting to consider those options. He was clearly open in that he wanted to stay. He stated it in interviews and on podcast appearances, and to me that was something that was a little bit risky. given that he knew there was a genuine possibility that he might be moving on, as this kind of interest from clubs like Ajax and Lons won't have just come about in the last few days. They'll have been monitoring him for a little while, and that, in my opinion, will be why Akpom was somewhat stalling on signing a new contract. But let's be fair to him, a move to Ajax is a huge step for a player like him. Playing in the Champions League, playing on the biggest stage of all, is a massive opportunity for him. And for a player who 12 months ago didn't really know where his career was going to be going, the chance for him to challenge himself amongst the best players in Europe is going to be huge for him. And that's something that he has every right to consider as he takes the next step in his career. As far as Middlesbrough are concerned, it's also a really good deal. Similarly, Michael Carrick was also very open that they wanted him to stay. Why wouldn't they? He scored 29 goals last season. He was the Player of the Year in the Championship, and no club actively wants to lose someone who was that influential and became the first striker since Bernie Slaven in 1990 to surpass 20 league goals. He smashed that with 29, so it wasn't just that he scraped past that total. And so I think his influence last season, and to be honest, in rejuvenating a lot of fans who become slightly disillusioned with Middlesbrough, was absolutely massive, because fans absolutely worshipped him and still hold a lot of respect for him. From the club's point of view, I think with two significant teams interested in Lons and Ajax, two teams who are going to be playing Champions League football this season, you can kind of see why the club opted to cash in on the player, given that his head was clearly turned. A deal is going to be worth £14 million, and that's a great deal for someone who was less than a year on his contract, was seemingly reluctant to sign a new contract, and frankly also only had one good season in his career so far. Albeit it was an outstanding season, and that was what has earned him the move to Ajax. But given that he's kind of flattered to deceive in the years previous to that, there would be an element of risk in handing him a massive new contract at the Riverside Stadium, given that if he falls flat in the next couple of years, they wouldn't be getting offered anywhere near the sort of price that they are this summer with Ajax. As far as the timeline and how the negotiations have sort of gone, there's been huge discrepancies in the narrative around this story, which has been sort of confusing for a lot of supporters, but also for myself as well. Both Chuba Akpom and the club have both been adamant that they wanted to get the deal done. So on the surface of it, you'd think that it would be quite simple to get done. It could have been tied up at the end of last season, and everyone could have kind of moved forward with this campaign with genuine optimism. But I think, as is the way in a lot of these situations, we'll probably never really know the full story of how these negotiations went on, because this sort of thing happens in football all the time, and at the same time things are massively nuanced in the game. It's not as simple as Middlesbrough want him to stay, so they're going to do everything that they possibly can. They have a budget that they want to stick to, and so financially they might have a limit in terms of what they can offer him. Akpom may want to stay, but obviously when clubs from the Champions League do come in for him, if they can offer him more money, they can offer him the opportunity to play on the biggest stage in Europe. That is obviously going to turn his head, and so it does become a little bit tricky, and it's not quite as black and white as what a lot of fans might believe. Akpom may have wanted to stay, but I think the opportunity to play for a club like Ajax is a huge step up. With all respect to Middlesbrough, we are in the Championship. The chance for him to play on the highest level doesn't come around every day, and so I think given his contract situation, it does kind of work out for him. Similarly with Middlesbrough, they clearly wanted him to stay, but if the price is right and have got the opportunity to reinvest in the team, it's something which has seemingly paid off for them, and it's a good deal for them. And with a couple of new signings on the way as well, it seems like they're already going to be looking to put that money to good use as they look to rebuild. Football's a complicated business, I think, at the end of the day, and this sort of thing does go on all of the time. But ultimately, I think all that matters is the fact that everyone seems happy with the deal. Middlesbrough are getting a good fee for a player who has 1 year left on his contract. Chuba Akpom is getting the chance of a lifetime to play for a club like Ajax and play in the Champions League. And Ajax are obviously getting their man and they're happy as well. So it's win-win-win as far as everyone's concerned. It's been a little bit confusing for supporters and for myself as well. But I think ultimately everyone can start to move on now. We can reinvest in the squad and look towards the next few weeks and trying to bring in some good names to help us kickstart our promotion push this season.